Welcome back to Don't Pick the Scab podcast, where we turn post-divorce scars into superpowers. Today, we're diving into a topic that's often misunderstood and incredibly powerful: sexual energy. Our guest, Matt Cook, who I've had on the podcast before, isn't just any coach. He's a maestro in sexual energy transformation. He's guided over 80,000 men to find their groove beyond the bedroom, using their sexual drive to create abundance in all areas of their lives. It teaches how to harness that primal energy to conquer anxiety, smash through society stigmas, and build trust and intimacy, all while keeping a sense of humor, which is a great thing. Get ready to spill the beans, or maybe not spill them at all, because this episode promises to be as enlightening as it is entertaining. Let's welcome Matt. Matt, tell us about yourself. I got some questions for you.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me. I have learned a lot coaching 80,000 men, and there's always a new story every day. I have a mail order bride story that just came across one of my students. And I also have a young man who has been struggling with performance anxiety, but so many stories. So hit me up with anything, man. We'll go from there.
So my men have like I said before in the pre-interview, we were talking, a lot of men get divorced, and then they find another sexual partner and stage fright. How can men accept stage fright, and how can they get past it?
Yeah, well, stage fright's a good word for it. Performance anxiety. I had a young man ask me about it recently, and it's exactly the same advice to any man of any age. First of all, I always explain that when you're having a sexual encounter, there's three people in the room. There's you, there's the girl, and there's your penis. You don't have any control over your penis, really. I found out I could will myself to lose an erection, but I couldn't will myself to get an erection. Completely different. If I thought about my dead grandmother or something, my erection would go away, but there was nothing I could do to make an erection happen. Of course, I've had a lot of men say, well, Matt, when I'm by myself, no problem. I get an erection just fine. But when I'm with the girl, that's when it just doesn't want to perform. That's kind of what we're talking about, right? Performance anxiety, when you really feel like you have to, quote, perform with this new woman. Boom. Yeah. So what's the difference? Well, this is what I learned a long time ago, is that you have to actually surrender the idea that you have control over your penis, really. That's why I say that there's the three people in the room. You don't have any control over your penis. And so if you know that, it does its thing or it doesn't do its thing. And that's the detachment that you get by intellectually realizing that you don't have any control. That's very, very, very helpful, David, to realize that, because you never did have control. You just thought you did. So if you don't, then you're just like, let's see what happens here, Let's see what happens. Now, one of the things that really makes it work a lot better is to focus on your own pleasure, whether or not you have an erection, and not the woman's pleasure. Now, that goes against everything that everybody's told you about making love. You're supposed to focus on the woman, not be selfish. It's really a recipe for unpleasantness and unhappiness.
Disaster.
It is, man. Disaster. It's yourself that you should be. So if I'm anxious about sex, I'm focusing on the wrong thing. What I like to do is focus on kissing her, smelling her, licking her, enjoying her, and whatever happens downstairs happens downstairs. I have one big trick up my sleeve, and I've taught this trick to thousands of men. And the men who try it continually thank me for this years later. They'll say, Matt, that was the greatest discovery. It's so simple, and it's made it so I don't feel anxious ever anymore. Now, here's what it is. What it is this. You don't need an erection to stick it in. Okay? You don't.
Okay.
Now, obviously, it's better to have an erection because that's what we want to do, but you really don't. I call it intercourse anytime. It's a very easy process. I have some diagrams in the book that people can get free. And basically, it's very simple, though. And you can get it in there and that's it. And then you're having sex. And a lot of times, an erection happens once you're inside her. And it doesn't matter if you're small, if you're large, every man can do this. It's very, very simple. And it's a fantastic technique. And some men use it every day because they have type 2 diabetes, or they have some medication they're taking that interferes with their erections. Mm-hmm. And so they use this because they can now have a wonderful sexual life. I had a couple who both had diabetes. They both were obese. They had never had sex. And then I showed them this, I told the woman about it. And she was like, couldn't stop talking about it after that. It just changed everything. Now they have a very sexual relationship. They had been together and never had sex before. That's an extreme case, but
Wow, that's a
anybody,
great case.
isn't that something?
Yep.
So and a lot of men will say, "Oh, it doesn't work," or they're just not doing it. I understand that everybody wants to have a fantastic erection, but I have coached 80,000 men, some of them as old as 95. I don't think I've coached anybody older than 95. And everybody wants to have a sexual relationship. They're not always able to have an erection, though. It doesn't matter anymore. Now, can she tell that you don't have an erection? If she looks, she can, but she really can't feel it because there's really two places in the vagina, we say vagina, in that area that women feel the most sensation. It's about the first 3/4 of an inch of her entrance. That's where she has her most nerve endings. And there's the G spot, which is connected to the whole clitoral area. That's kind of right there in the first. And then way in the back, there's another nerve bunches, I believe the Van der Graaf spot way back there, but most men don't ever reach that, right kind of above her cervical area. But that's it. The rest of her vagina doesn't feel that much sensation. Just like a man's penis, you feel a lot at the tip, but not so much at the base and the middle. So if you just get it in there, she can't really tell, honestly. I found this out numerous times. So that's one thing, because if you know that you can't fail, you're not nervous anymore, right? Because it's going to work one way or the other.
It's going to happen. So you talk about transforming sexual energy into life abundance post-divorce. Can you explain how this works in practical terms for men who might be skeptical?
Well, I would say first that, do we agree, David, that for men, our sexual energy is kind of our driver in life, not just in finding a woman, and also just our work and our ambition? I mean, do you feel that way? You're an accomplished guy. Do you feel that your sex drive has helped you get to where you are?
Definitely.
I think so too. And years ago, there was a famous book called Think and Grow Rich, and by Napoleon Hill. And one of the central parts of it, which I'll never forget reading, was about sublimation of your sexual drive, in this case, into a business ambition. Sexual energy can be channeled into many different things. Basically, everything you create as a man, you can create much better if you can harness your sexual energy. I think of it like, especially for men, we have a lot of times a strong sex drive. It's like rapids. All we have to do is get our boat on the rapids, and then the rapids carry us where we want to go. Those rapids are our sex drive. We could just stay in the boat, and we can get over. But what men do instead is they waste their seed, they waste their drive on porn. Now, I have found that more problems happen from porn, especially video porn, high-speed video porn that started in about the year 2000. They didn't have it before that. You had to go to a dirty theater or get some crummy videos before that.
Room with beads.
Yeah. That's right. I did go to an adult theater once. It was really a grimy, really gross experience. I was like 20 in Santa Monica, the Pussycat Theater in Santa Monica, California. I never wanted to do that again, but you had to do that. And then high-speed porn came out, and you can divide men by their sexual energy roughly by age, because a man who is in his early 40s probably got into internet porn when high-speed video porn was available. But men who are 50 or 60, 70, they didn't get into high-speed porn because there wasn't any high-speed video porn. And their sexuality is much, much better than the younger men, actually. And that's because when we're post-adolescence in our early 20s, we're and really in adolescence, we're developing our sexual proclivities. We have a few experiences that imprint on us, and a lot of times that the fantasy that sort of drives us, the things we really like, that's the same for the whole rest of our life. And that might have developed when we were teenagers. And that is very, very important, that we not watch porn, that we not get that sexual programming through porn, because if we do, it ruins us in our brains. It makes it very, very difficult to develop sexual energy without porn. We become very dependent on it. And what do you think porn really is, right? Porn is watching other people have sex. That's what porn is. So anyone under like 40 nowadays has been wired to like to watch people having sex as opposed to having sex.
Okay.
So to build sexual energy, you have to drop that stuff. Now, that watching people have sex, that programming, if you were unfortunate enough to not have been warned and you got into that early on, as I did, I got into it very early. If you got, you can undo that, but those pathways, those neural pathways in your brain will always be there. Kind of like if you're an alcoholic, maybe you could drink a little, but you could easily become an alcoholic again, right? Because you've done it before. Your brain is all prepared for that. Same thing with high-speed video porn. You have to move away from it. It could take months. I've seen so many men develop incredible sexual energy, libido, erections, and everything. And we started out talking about performance anxiety, stage fright. It tends to disappear when they have gotten far enough away from porn where their brain has started to rewire. It could take 3, 4, 5 months, but they don't feel as because this is really a result of watching porn, believe it or not. It goes away when you leave porn behind, including fantasy, and that can take 4, 5, 6 months. It's like a detox. It's exactly the same as detoxing from alcohol or drug addiction or gambling addiction, right? Your world is gray for a while. In this case, your penis doesn't want to have an erection, which is called flatlining. So withdrawal from porn takes a while. At first, you're in this gray world. Everything is kind of gray and just not, it's called anhedonia. You don't feel very much. You're numb. 3, 4, 5 months of that, everything starts picking up. And I did find a shortcut to eliminating this. So you don't have to go 4 or 5 months in flatline. And that was a great discovery of mine because I've coached so many men and I've tried a lot of this myself and I've worked with so many guys. I found that you can quit porn and you don't have to flatline. You don't have to go through 4 or 5 months of a dead dick. And you can, it's just really easy actually. Should I tell you and your listeners?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure you've heard of the hormone oxytocin. Obviously, you've heard of oxytocin, called often the love hormone. And there is something to that. So the oxytocin is something that actually is the key to good erections, the key to feeling loving feelings, the key to having penile sensation, and the key to really liking your partner a lot as opposed to wanting sex, just more than sex, like really, really digging on your partner is oxytocin. So I found that if you do oxytocin building activities with a woman, you don't flatline. You could quit porn and just go right into having great sex without anxiety and everything just works really, really well. People don't catch this because oxytocin building activities are things like kind of the old fashioned, what grandma would have called courting, holding hands, staring into each other's eyes, holding each other, right?
Old school.
Well, she was right. Those are the things that build oxytocin. They make you feel really wonderful, and make you feel wonderful about another person, and that actually lets you leave porn behind and have an amazing, loving, romantic relationship. And I found that the performance anxiety just doesn't even happen when you're in that mode. So what you want to do is, this is my formula for this. You want to go out on a date. If you like a girl, don't jump into bed with her and have sex right away. And that includes oral sex. And it's not because you're a prude. I love sex. I usually have sex twice a day. I plan to have it my entire life until the day I drop dead. Sex is incredible. And because of that, you don't want to ruin it. And I'm not saying you're going to ruin it every time if you go on a date and you have sex on the first date. But if you're dating and you want to meet somebody and you want a long-term relationship, the odds are way better if you have like 3 dates where you don't have sex, but you do these oxytocin building behaviors, the naked cuddle. And some people will keep their underwear on. They don't want to have sex. It's very tempting, but that's how you start building a relationship with somebody that can last, where you don't feel the performance anxiety. Because if you have the oxytocin coursing through you, really dig on somebody, none of that stuff is a problem. That's the key, really. And that's been shown. I remember seeing it in rat studies, and I've seen it in human studies.
What happens to the couples that use porn every now and then? Those couples.
Well, I'm not going to say there are rules here, David. There are not rules. People do have good relationships who use porn together sometimes.
Okay. All right. So
however,
things.
Okay. There are. It's not going to. But I don't think in the long run it's a good idea. I think it's not a good idea because the secret of a great romantic sexual life is not in novelty. It's not in new things all the time. It's not in watching other people have sex, or it's not. And, I think I discussed this last time, but we have sort of two pathways in our brains that work around sex. One of them is dopamine pathway. One of them is oxytocin pathway. The dopamine pathway is about novelty. It's about new things, new activities. It's about, it's kind of what drives us to go shopping and want new things. There's nothing wrong with dopamine, but if our sex life is dominated by dopamine, which it is for 99.9% of people, that means that the novelty wears off and we become bored with our partner. We become bored. Then we say, well, let's bring porn in. Let's bring spanking, or let's bring whatever, all sorts of things. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things, but the novelty wears off. And a lot of times this is why relationships disintegrate, because the dopamine dominant pathway just makes it so it's boring after a while. And that happened to me probably 12, 15 years into my relationship. Is this all there is? Then you start thinking, well, I'm 40, whatever, 45. I don't have forever I'm going to live. I'm going to lose out with this person I'm with. I better, maybe I'm missing out. And you become bored. You look at other women, you look at other situations. And the problem is that it may be interesting for a while with someone else and crazy good sex, but that wears off pretty quickly. The hotter the sex, a lot of times there's a post-orgasmic fallout, which we can talk about, which people, they don't really notice until they notice it. And then they go, how did I ever miss this in my life? It's so obvious. And that hot sex ends up it all becomes boring. So when people say, watch porn in the bedroom, what they're trying to do, in my opinion, is they're trying to make some new thing in their bedroom so that they aren't bored with each other. Wouldn't you agree, or do you see it a different way?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like, look at that shiny rock. Look at that shiny rock. You're like rock hopping, just bang, 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 bang.
Yeah, the shiny rock becomes boring, and then you need another one. So what I found is that the other track that can dominate our sexuality is much, much better. It's the oxytocin track. Oxytocin, all the oxytocin building activities, they can let you have sex for 30, 45 minutes, an hour, once or twice or 3 times a day, whatever you want to do. And you don't get bored with somebody. You really love them and just can't get enough of them. It's so much better a way to live. You can have the exact same sex every time. It could be missionary. It could be, and it's so amazing. It feels so incredible. You never even knew it could be like that. And then the next time it's even better.
Because you're in that oxytocin phase.
Yeah. It's the oxytocin dominant sex life. So that's so much better way to live. But unfortunately, we miss that because our whole society, everything have all these sexual cues, sexy girls on ads, sex scenes, and even when you watch HBO, it doesn't matter. There's sex scenes everywhere. And we don't realize that this exists. So we end up in the dopamine dominant sexual life. And that's where we continually are unhappy. So I've been married about almost 40 years. We can't get enough of each other. We have sex twice a day. And this is not me. It's not because I'm so special. I'm not. I've taught this in all the guys that started end up doing the same thing. They just love it. It's just so great. It's just so fantastic. Now, one of the things that this involves, central to this, when you talk about sexual energy, is ejaculatory discipline, is being able to relax your pelvic floor area so that you don't come all the time you're having sex. Because when you do come, you lose a tremendous amount of sexual energy. And it could be a day or two, or it could be 4 or 5 days to gain it back. It could be a week or 2 weeks, depending on your health, depending on if you're on medications, if you have chronic problems. And so I teach men what I call nirvana sex, which is no religious slight meant to people who are Hindu. It's just a Western term for it. Seems reasonable. And that is sex where we have ejaculatory sex sometimes, but not all the time. So maybe every 4 days, every 5 days, every 7 days, every 3 days on a schedule, depending on your health and how young you are and basically this starts building your sexual energy and building it, and your attraction to your partner. It creates very even relationships where there's no drama. And everything becomes so much easier in life outside of the bedroom. Business becomes easier. Ask your boss for a raise, quitting and starting your own business. All of it becomes so much easier because you're building more sexual energy and you're having lots of sex just because you're not ejaculating every time. So I suggest on a schedule. And that seems to be the key to happiness as a man, honestly.
Is it possible for a man who's experienced rejection, feelings of unattractiveness, or sexual dysfunction to embrace his sexual energy as a tool for healing?
I think it's the best tool for healing. So one of the things that men can do is not masturbate to a conclusion, and not watch porn. If you need sexually stimulating material, reading erotica, the written words, sex stories is much better on your brain than watching people have sex. And then if you kind of masturbate without reaching an orgasm, without, basically you start building more sexual energy. And even if you have whatever this, I dealt with so many men who have erectile dysfunction, tens of thousands of them. You're building sexual energy. You're sort of priming the pump, and it's much easier for someone to enter your life then because you have this. You're rebuilding your sexual energy. Now, this works whether or not you can get an erection, because as I said, there are men that many men I deal with that can't get an erection due to medical problems or medication they're taking or all kinds of things. Sometimes they've had chemotherapy. There's a lot of traumatic things that happen to men. Nobody ever talks about this. I had a student who had a kidney transplant. He had a congenital kidney problem, and he found a donor and he got a kidney transplant. And he had ED for months afterwards. And nobody told him that was going to happen. But for men, any traumatic event a lot of times will kill erections for a while. And so this can help rebuild that and help rebuild your life sexually.
You mentioned approaching women in person. Is there a reason this could be a better method than dating apps?
Well, dating apps, I think, are very good if you're one of the 3 or 4% of men who are really good looking, young, maybe having money, but not necessarily. But if you're like the rest of us, dating apps suck. They're very biased towards women, not and against men. I'm sure you know people that have had some success with dating apps, but do you know anybody over 40 that's had success with dating apps? Maybe not many, right?
Not many.
Not many. So we're in a playing field that is stacked against us. Whereas if I go outside and I walk around, I see women all over the place, and they're either by themselves or in small groups of women. It's very easy to go up. It's simple, not easy. It's simple to go up and talk to women all over the place. And you don't have any of the disadvantages that you do online. It's just you and her. Whereas if you're online, swipe, you're gone. You're in her life about a quarter of a second. Whereas you go up to her in person, 10, 15 minutes, you're laughing, you're both making jokes, get her number, take a selfie. You should take a selfie of both of you real quick. And then you can send her the selfie so she'll remember who you are. And you have a date. That's how you want to meet women now. You don't want to go on these horrible apps. They're just stacked against you.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. Why do you suggest that the listener be a shock absorber in relationships, not reactive? How does that work?
Well, I think the essence of masculinity, the male and female element, is that women tend to be more reactive and emotional. They're also weaker physically, usually, and smaller, and they're more vulnerable, obviously. And so one of the fundamental elements of the masculine feminine is that women want a man who they can go to protect. He can protect her. He can make her feel better emotionally. I don't mean protection necessarily against a prowler in the house, although that's certainly an element, but basically emotional protection. And so if you're the strong silent type, in a sense, if you can listen to her story and not get all emotional, if you don't get all worked up, if you help her govern her own emotions, Mary, look at me in the eyes, settle down. Everything's okay. She's very happy for you to be doing that. It makes her feel more secure, makes her feel very secure, and makes her much more attracted to you. That is the natural masculine feminine role, actually. And so one of the things that you kind of have to give up as a man, if you've ever felt like doing it, it's not a good idea to cry a lot. It's not a good idea to be very reactive publicly if you want to be attractive as a man. There's this sort of myth that's always put out by women that women like the sensitive type of man, but they don't. They really don't want to see a man all vulnerable, who's falling apart. They really don't. It's totally not attractive. And you're laughing because you know that's true. Where did that come from? From women.
From women.
That don't know anything. They never had to get a woman, So yeah, it's critically important. And I think that it comes naturally for a lot of men, especially older men over 40, because they sort of grew up with traditional culture of masculinity. But I think that with young men now, I don't think that's the case. A lot of young men are very reactive, emotional, and I would say kind of more effeminate. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you?
Yep, I have. So you mentioned the importance of frequent sex for a healthy relationship. How can men navigate this with their partners, especially when dealing with mismatched libidos?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you something. Women, as they get older, unless they're exceptional, their libido generally falls to very low levels after, well, it starts with what's called perimenopause, where their
Yep.
periods become irregular, and then menopause when they stop altogether. At that period, even from perimenopause, which could happen in women in her 40s, even early 40s, even late 30s sometimes, their drive tends to fall off a cliff. My wife has very little, I would say no sex drive really, but we have sex all the time. It's because it's part of a healthy relationship and she likes the closeness of it. She
Mm-hmm.
likes it. But what I always suggest, this is going to be anathema to some people. They go, it should be spontaneous. It should just be like you just feel like doing it and you go in the bedroom, you do it. I don't think that's workable. I'm a big believer in scheduling sex, and you have sex on a schedule, whether you feel like it or not, barring a couple things, sickness, or there's someone in the next room, a house guest, and everyone sort of doesn't
Hey,
want to be hurt.
screw it, man. Hey, sorry, you're next door.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. So I mean, those are it. Otherwise, you have sex on those days. That's it. That's what I suggest because that keeps relationship healthy and alive. It really does. And what I found with women is that they feel like doing it when they're doing it. I'm talking about women of this age who have lost their sex drive.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy to be having sex when they're having sex. For some reason, even sometimes you have to remind her. Remember the last time, Cindy, we had sex? How much you loved it? But for women, they get into it when they're doing it.
Yep.
So I suggest scheduling.
Yeah. How can harnessing the primal energy help with anxiety and societal stigmas?
Well, what do you mean by the societal stigmas? What?
Like sex once a month, things like that.
Yeah.
Whatever society tries to impart on people that doesn't work.
So the basic question is how would it help anxiety? Would that be a good question to
Yep.
talk
There
about?
you go.
Okay,
Yep.
how could it help anxiety? It's very interesting because oxytocin, when people raise their oxytocin levels, like through frequent cuddling and a lot of sex, especially with a lot of non-ejaculatory sex, I have found again and again that someone who's depressed their entire life, within 6 months, the depression lifts. And people who are addicted to alcohol or drugs or porn, just like I talked about, they find it very easy to get rid of those. Their anxiety level goes down to the point where everything is so much smoother in their life, so much better, and they've never felt as good in their whole lives. So I think there's something about the oxytocin. There is. I've read it in studies, and having a secure relationship with a lot of oxytocin that quells anxiety and depression and makes it very easy to go out there and fight the dragons as a man that you have to fight. And then you come back in the arms of your wonderful partner and have a lot of sex. And it just makes everything so much easier to deal with in life. All the issues of life don't seem that bad anymore.
Why is humor so important?
Well, I think everybody feels life is a heavy load, and when we're laughing, it doesn't feel heavy. At that period we're laughing, everything's completely good. Now, you definitely, as a man, you don't want to be the clown. You could go
Yep.
overboard in humor for sure. But if you have a sense of humor and you get her laughing and you laugh, it basically says to her that with you, life can be safe because when you laugh at something, it means that you're not afraid of it so much anymore.
Good.
And so laughter is a way of a woman, when she can laugh with you, she feels safe and secure. And if you're making jokes and laughing, it shows you have confidence that you don't take the oppressive and difficult world all that seriously either, that you have an okay time going out in the world and fighting the dragons. Not that big of a deal. And that's very, very masculine, very attractive to women for a man to feel that way.
All right, Matt. Man, you knocked it out of the park again. So what are the top 3 things you want to tell my men out there when they start to date again? What are some of the things?
First thing is,
let's talk
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, you want to close the physical space as quickly as possible on the very first date. So never sit across from somebody even on a first date, try to make it so you can sit next to her. You got to close that physical space very, very quickly. She may not like you. You may not like her. So you have an exit plan, a drink or some coffee. 45 minutes later, you're on your way. But I would say the biggest mistake men make is not closing the space quickly enough. I think going for a kiss on the first dates, not at the end, but in the middle, is very, very good. And she might turn her cheek, or she might, indicate she doesn't want you to kiss her. You just have to continue on good humor, and you talk, and then you try it again. And maybe the third time she lets you kiss her. That's very, very masculine, very attractive. That's what moves a relationship along, closing the physical space quickly. The second thing I think, as you're in a relationship, is the flirting never ends. Having sexy fun and teasing and flirting every day, sexual jokes and innuendos and everything every day. Never want that to stop. I start with it, continue with it, and do it that way. Those are what I would say. And the other thing is, have her look into your eyes, look into each other's eyes. You can make it into a game. The more you can look into each other's eyes, it just magic happens. And so often we don't close the physical space, we don't really flirt, and we don't have that eye contact. And if we change that, everything changes so much better.
You heard from Matt. I have to tell you, every time I'm in the kitchen with my wife, I always grab her ass. Every single time.
I do that too.
I mean, like I touch it, like I brush it, I do the two globes between the crack, boop, boop. And she just looks at me like, seriously? And I told her, I said, the one day I stop doing that, you'll notice it.
Well, yeah. And I always tell her, I said, let's go upstairs and, let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, and, we just did or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's always fun. She has to know that I'm always attracted. Man has to be attracted to her all the time. Fundamental to the relationship.
Tell people out there how to find you on the internet, and I'll have the connections on the show notes.
Yeah, just visit dailymedicaldiscoveries.com is a good site. And I publish a newsletter that you can read there every day, or you can subscribe. We talk about men's health and sex topics a lot at dailymedicaldiscoveries.com.
All right, Matt, hold on the line. That was a great one. And I like doing these doubles, man. The second part is always good. But I appreciate your time and hanging out with me and the fellas. But hold on, sir.